Hello, this is Ed Rigsbee with another edition of Raw and Unedited for Association Executives. This is the place where we give you tips, tactics, solutions, and all kinds of cool stuff to help you do a better job running your association and to help you do a better job helping your members. Hey, have you ever thought about the situation or dealt with the situation where new board members come in, or even board members that have been there for a while, that have this tendency to want to be managers versus strategic governance thinkers? And to talk about that, I've got Tom Pappas, the executive director of the Western States Roofing Contractors Association, and he's coming back for a second time on Raw and Unedited. Tom, glad you're here. Want to get into the topic. So, Tom, how do you deal with it? What is your thinking in dealing with members that want to be, they want to micromanage you and your staff versus be strategic thinkers and, put out the direction and then get out of the way and let you and your staff do your job?
Good morning, Ed. I have to say that in my earlier years in this, it always became a significant frustration. But as I gotten a little older and a little wiser, hopefully, I've been able to kind of reframe and say, okay, the people that come onto the board of directors are obviously leaders in their own industry. And as a result, they've been elected to this office, which is wonderful. I mean, we need their brain power. They've got the eyes and ears of the greater sense of what needs to happen with their industry. But what I've done over time has been able to give them a little bit of a break, because their tendency to move into management in a nonprofit board on which they are, they're really the stakeholders. They're the key people in this, in making policy and governance decisions. They tend to revert back to what they do in their own companies. And I can't fault them for that. They've been doing it for a long time and been doing it very successfully. So it's not so much a fault thing. It's just a kind of where they revert to. And there's no fault to be had there. But one of the things that does become frustrating is because boards change on an ongoing basis. They change all the time. And so the issue of management becomes one of continuity. The issue of governance, because it's such at a macro level, has to be considered at 30,000 feet. The number of reams of paper that I buy based on management is based on basically what we've been hearing in the past, based on the data, how much we need. Very few people know what that is, other than maybe the people in my office and myself. So when people, and I'm not saying they do this, but this is kind of an example, where they'll come in and say, Tom, I think you have too much paper on hand. I think you need to cut that back. I get that, but do they really know how much paper we're using? So that is all to say that they make great decisions at a macro level, so long as they stay there, because they are the hands and feet of things that I know nothing about. In my case, roofing. I would never go into a building on which I would put a roof. I just simply would not. But likewise, my hope is that my volunteer directors and officers would not want to go to the Secretary of State or the, any sort of dealings with the IRS regarding nonprofit law like I would. So that's kind of the what do you want to call it, the tension that's built inherently within nonprofits who have leaders as their board members who really want to go back into managing the organization. Because quite frankly, I look at it all the day, every day, quite often. I've got, matrix, I've got dashboards and everything. They don't have that. And so if they wanted that, they certainly could have that. My guess is they're pretty busy running their own business.
Sure, I get that. So, Tom, moving forward, I mean, there's always the challenge of, the board members, actually reading the bylaws, getting familiar with the bylaws, and then interpreting the bylaws and acting legally within the bylaws. So, what do you do to try to urge your board members to understand the legal documents by which you operate, and then try to fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to operate within that realm?
That is a challenge because some bylaws can be very convoluted. They can be very complicated. When I first came on, our bylaws, I believe, were 37 pages. And as you recall, you helped me along with a couple of officers. We whittled those down significantly. Our current bylaws are currently 9 pages. And as you pointed out, when we were going through this process, it is by law what we need to do. That is not policies and procedures, which are fluid, can come and go based on the whim, the desire, the need. So my reference is to make sure that they are understanding that the bylaws don't govern the way that we manage the organization. Policies, procedures do. The bylaws go basically on what we have to do as an organization by law. Now, I've found that many times when you speak of legal things, many directors start to clam up. They start to tighten up because they believe that only an attorney can speak to issues of legality. I have met many attorneys, and I'll just leave it right there, but I've met many attorneys where they come in and they advise our board from a corporate perspective, because that's where they come from, is a corporate perspective. And that's certainly within their realm of possibility, but very few. I've probably on my hand, I can count 2 or 3. And they are people have been using for 20 some years that know the nonprofit environment. They understand the issue of bylaws versus policies and procedures. So what I do is again, when I say, folks of the board, we need to keep this simple, we need to keep it understandable, and we need to do what the government says we have to do to maintain our nonprofit status and to maintain our California, in our case, California corporation law, sanction under the Secretary of State. That's all I do. That's all they need to be doing. Everything else is up to discussion. It can be changed after due course and vetting. So that's what I do. And then after they look at me and they start to tighten up, they say, hey, Tim, you're not an attorney. I says, no, but I played one on TV. No, I'm just kidding. I did not play one on TV. Not nearly good looking enough. So what I did is I bring in an attorney. And the attorney that they tend to rely on, and this is really a key point, the attorneys they tend to rely on are the big corporate lawyers. They tend to not rely much on nonprofit lawyers. Again, harkening back to what we talked about before, they're involved in business. They're involved in for-profit business. And the counsel that they get for their companies is absolutely appropriate for their companies. It is absolutely not appropriate, or can be appropriate in some extent, but not as far as bylaws are concerned, to the operation of a 501c3, 501c6, those kinds of things. So there's your dynamic. You get the dynamic of saying, hey guys, we got to do what's legal. Hey folks, we need to do what's legal. Well, this is bylaw. And they look at me, hey Tom, you're not an attorney. And I says, well, I go get an attorney. Well, we don't believe you're a nonprofit attorney. We want to talk to an attorney that we believe. And then I go, okay, well, bring one in, as long as they're speaking the truth. And then sometimes they start adding on things that are more corporate related or for-profit related. And that's when we start going down a very slippery slope in terms of what governs our behavior.
Tom, how do you get it through the members' brains, the board members, the volunteer leaders, that, we're in California, but this is pretty much applicable in every state. How do you get it through their heads that, okay, if you're following in good faith your fiduciary responsibility, the state of California affords you a certain amount of protection against liability. But if you start going down some other path, there might be some liability issues, not only to the association, but to themselves. I mean, how do you get that through to them?
Ed, it's just a constant reminder. It's a constant struggle and everything like that. And we understand, I mean, they believe they understand D&O insurance. And some of them just basically say that, well, I'm covered to say anything or do anything I want to. They're not. They're simply not. But we up our limits on fiduciary, on liability insurance, D&O insurance, all the time, simply because just the liability for board actions, for presidential edicts, for executive director edicts, for people that have the authority to take the path of the organization officially, are up all the time. But that does not preclude an individual director, should they choose to go out on their own. They're they're liable for their own stuff, basically. And I keep urging them, I keep asking them to maintain their criteria. If they want to clearly say, hey, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, I'm just speaking as an opinion of myself, that's fine. They can do that, they can give that proviso, and nobody's going to, kind of alter their free speech right. But they have to do it within the context of their responsibility. And if they do not do that, that lends onto them. So to answer your question, is keep repeating it, keep making a record of the fact that you've made them aware of it. And then when all of a sudden they do something that outside the guidelines, my guess is, and I've had this experience where all of a sudden they've gone outside the safety of the pool and they've decided going down kind of a back roads. And someone has told them, hey, I'm going to sue you as the president of Western States or whatever board. And they'll go, well, wait a second, I don't represent them. Well, they don't realize that actually they are representing us. Mm-hmm. And when they do that in the context of the board, they're not representing, while they're actually representing them, we can essentially separate ourselves from that stream that they've decided to go with, and unfortunately have to cut that person, whether it be a director or whether it be an officer, whether it be even myself.
Sure.
I mean, I can be fired. Yeah. We just cut them off.
Yeah. Let me go just a tad deeper on this. We're talking to some degree about a member going rogue, and
let's just make sure that when we're talking a member, we're not talking about a member of the a member of the board.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's fine.
When we're talking about a board member, an officer, going rogue and deciding they're going to go their own direction, do their own thing, what are your thoughts as far as dealing with that? The other chief staff executives like yourself that'll be watching this, what are your thoughts, experiences on dealing with that kind of dynamic?
Boy, it's really tough. But again, I've mentioned this to you before. If you stay with the truth of the bylaws, the provisions of law, and guidance from your counselors, imagine yourself reading in the morning paper when you wake up that you did something that were pursuant to the bylaws, the policies and procedures, with legality and everything like that, and someone didn't like it. Okay, that front page would outline that, hopefully. Read that front page and say, can I live with myself? Can I do something with what I did? Does it have the integrity of good business sense? Does it have the integrity of law behind it? Does the integrity of experience with counsel? If you can say that, then they pay us a good bit of money to be leaders. And we are clearly leaders in our industry. We're not leaders of roofing, of doctors, of lawyers, of insurance agents. We're not leaders of that. We are leaders of ours. And they pay us to be leaders. And so long as you stay within those guidelines of ethical, moral, and integral behavior, thought, and decision-making, I don't know how you can go wrong. Obviously, that's said by me, an older guy, who's probably more at the end of his career than he is at the beginning. But quite frankly, I've been doing it for an awfully long time. And my dad once told me, he says, don't, if you ever have to do it once, make sure it's big enough to where you'll never have to worry about working again. And that stuck with me. That stuck with me since probably 1970, probably since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So it's been long ingrained into me that if you want to do that, just make sure you do it once and do it big enough so that you never have to worry about it again, because your word will be garbage. And quite frankly, at this point, the executive director, the chief staff officer, is the only continuity of word and deed within the organization. You're aspiring that your president, your board, your executive committee all does that. They may or may not. They may do it well. They may not do it well. But the fact of the matter is, when they get elected and they move on down the road, that you're left with what's left. And that's something that you always have to keep. It weighs heavily on you, especially when people go down a path that you believe isn't consistent with good business behavior or isn't consistent with what we've done in the past. I'm not saying getting buried in the past. I'm just saying that let's vet the solutions before we just run them out there.
Sure. So, thank you. You told me a while back, and I'm trying to get this right, that for your board meetings, you put a sign on the back of everybody's name tent or whatever. And I forget what did you say that that sign said on the back facing them?
If the decision you're about to make doesn't improve member value and experience, why are you making it?
Yeah, yeah.
Real simple.
So has that, and you've been doing that for maybe a year or something now?
Actually, several years, Ed. I mean, we talked about, again, as we attempted to get people to the higher level and to get them out of, whether an and or an a should be in a document that we're reviewing online, that type of thing. Does that, again, we've been doing it for a few years now. And since we've been bringing them up, which I believe has probably been 2 or 3 years, while they've grown accustomed to it, I can't say they've always abided by that directive.
But I guess the question is by you having that message, let's just call it, message of leadership on the back of their name tent, do you ever find yourself in board meetings and discussions, say something like, ladies, gentlemen, let's go back to what it says on the back of your name tent? Do you ever bring that up if you think that they're going down a direction maybe that isn't the best for them, or if a particular leader is going down a direction that's maybe not the best of the order? Or do you, I guess the question is, do you just leave it as a subtle reminder, or do you sometimes go back and actually, a little bit more overtly bring it up to the offending member?
Well, the reason why we put it on their name tags or their name tents is so that they see it all the time. And as they're looking at the documents they're reviewing and everything like that, they always have that in their mind. But there are times when we're extraordinarily in the weeds. I mean, we are so deep in the weeds that you can't see the light of day. And all of a sudden I'll say, guys, I do it in my own, classic way, which isn't that classic, but I say, guys, we're crop dusting here. We're going to hit the power poles. We try to make light of it. We try to bring people out of the weeds back up to their 30,000 foot level. And some people are good with that. And some people just ignore it and keep back in the weeds. They'll say, yeah, Tom, I understand that, but I'm still concerned about whether or not there's an and or an there, because that's very important. So to your answer, yeah, we put it there all the time. We've done it for, I think Joel, one of my staff, put it on there a while back, probably, let's say 2 years at least. We definitely referred to it the first time. We referred to it periodically, but we try not to make it a hounding, if you will, because that just becomes a point of argumentation.
Gotcha. So, just from your perspective, I mean, you deal with an interesting group of folk. I mean, you're in construction, and what I'm getting ready to say, I want to be careful how I say it. My guess is not a lot of people have accused construction people of being overly sophisticated. And as such, it's, a lot of construction people, while they might be running multi-million-dollar companies, they still tend to have this blue collar mentality and live in a blue collar world. And how do you help them to transition mentally, from blue collar in the construction trades, where every discussion seems to need to be peppered with profanity, to bringing them, bringing them into a little bit more professional atmosphere. Let's call it bureaucratic. I hate to say it, but but in their leadership role, you know, has there been any tips, tactics, solutions, little things that you found that have helped you over the years to help, let's say, some of these blue collar type folk to move into a much more, let's call it, professional leadership role in fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility running the organization?
Really loaded question, Ed.
I
I've got a great group of people that I work with, and sometimes they get off the beam and everything. But I'm going to challenge two of your assumptions.
Okay.
One is they're not sophisticated. They are extraordinarily sophisticated. I've been working in the construction industry since 1984. And let me tell you that the information they have about overhead and labor costs and burden and supply issues and training and that's heady stuff. It's heady stuff in their industry, whether you're talking about general contractors, mason contractors, whether you're talking about roofing contractors. It is heady stuff. Now, the fact that their adjective use is, it is what it is inconsequential to me in terms of the end of the day. We do ask people to watch their language because we have a broad diversion, or what am I trying to say? We've got a widespread.
They got a broad diversity of people that
that's
have religious beliefs, sensitivities, and all that kind of good stuff.
All that, yeah, we got all that. And so we just make sure we got women in there, we've got minorities, we've got young people, we got old people, we got pretty much everybody that you can possibly offend in going down the wrong way. So the second thing is that they come from a blue-collar background. Some of these do, some of them don't. Some of them come from they come, in my case, come off the roof, and they've been in their company for a long, long time. That does not mean they're not sophisticated in their business, and they're not sophisticated in in the way they run their business and the way they look at things. It just means they're not sophisticated in the way I run things. The way I run things as a nonprofit, and the only I guess you might call tension is about that is whether or not we being they and myself are willing to acknowledge that we're both experts in our field. I tend to be more liberal and understanding and expressing that I am absolutely not an industry expert in construction.
Sure.
You sat through some of our technical meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, my eyes just kind of glaze over, and they're talking about, microscopy and steep slope. Okay, that's really cool, and I find it interesting, but it is not anything that I'm anything more than conversant in. I give them their credit. The reverse isn't so much. Many of the folks that are now in our leadership weren't even born when I started my career. That's fine. And unfortunately, whether it be a generational thing or societal thing, people tend to not trust what they don't understand.
Mm.
They don't believe that they don't believe, in my opinion,
mm-hmm.
that people can be leaders in an industry if you don't understand it. The only way you can be a leader is if you get on a cable news network and you spout off, or you get interviewed by somebody like an Ed Rigsbee. No disrespect, but you get interviewed by some industry expert or person that you believe that has credibility, and you evaluate them and you listen to them else, and they bring somebody on. Well, because Ed's a really smart guy, the guy he talks to is probably a pretty smart guy too. He may not agree with him, but he understands that he's a smart guy. Sure. So there tends to be that just kind of cross-reference, if you will, where people understand that Ed's a really smart guy in the ROI business. I think he's a rock star. He's helped our organization immeasurably. But as far as putting on a roof, I'm not sure that I would totally go down a building that Ed put a roof on. I'm just not down with that. Does that make sense to you, Ed? I mean, does it really make sense? Because again, it is a societal, it's a generational, it's a whatever thing, but I know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And that makes me smarter than a person that doesn't know, that knows what he did. What am I trying to say here? I know what I don't know, and I'm good with that. If I don't know what I don't know, then I'm good with that. Some people aren't.
I got to say, Tom, in my 30 plus years of being a speaker and a consultant to associations, I'm a font of useless knowledge in every industry. I know just enough to get myself in heaps of trouble. And
I'm talking about slip resistance on steep slope. No, never listen to me, ever. Now you're talking about, the 1040, we've got to file and who, what often. Yeah. I want to listen.
Yeah, no, that's too funny. Hey, before we close this up, let me just kind of give you the opportunity to have an open mic and just in the area of association governance, dealing with bylaws, liability, fiduciary responsibility, members that get off the tracks, various things. Your last word, your last comment, something that maybe I didn't ask that might be on your mind or something you might want to clear up, I'll just give you the open mic and let you at it.
But it's always good visiting with you. I mean, it's always a kick, both privately and on venues like this. So appreciate you bringing me on.
Thank you.
One thing I have to just say is to the senior staff officers, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you that this is not 1984, not 1994, not 2004. This is 2020. And the mindsets that you have to agree to is be proud of your profession. You are a professional in your own rights, whether people in other industries acknowledge that or not. I can guarantee you the people within your industry do. That's why they got the CAE. That's why you've got ASAE. That's why we've got all these professional organizations that support and grow and encourage those of us that have been doing this for a long time. I wish I would have had ASAE back when I was starting this. Now we just had somebody that says, you want to do it? Sure, I'll try it. No longer. Just want to encourage you that if you always stay with the idea of law, common sense, agreed upon bylaws, because you can't change those nilly-willy. Those have to be agreed upon. They have to be vetted, and in many cases have to be approved by the members of the entire organization. Sometimes the board, sometimes, but it has to certainly be vetted. If you do that, I think you'll sleep well. I think you'll be comfortable with your career. You'll be comfortable in your own skin. And if people, whether they be attorneys, doctors, lawyers, say, hey, John, Joe, Sally, you don't know what you're talking about, they would be correct in the area of which they are experts. They would not be correct in the area in which you're an expert. I just want to encourage you, make sure that you understand that you are a professional. You know what you're doing, and if you don't, you better, because if you don't, you're going to get in big trouble, and fiduciary is not going to help you. Nothing's going to help you, and the least of all is going to be your members on whom they really rely. And if they were honest, they tell you that your counsel has greater impact than you'll ever imagine. They may not admit it, but know it. And when they close, when they close the public meeting, they start talking about over a beer in the bar, start making phone calls to one another, guarantee you they're listening to which they may not agree with it, but I guarantee you that's the starting point for which all conversations start. So stand up and be proud.
So I kind of got from that, as a chief staff executive, rely on law and common sense to guide you.
No better. And the common sense that you've gained over the 2 years, 20 years that you've been there. Because again, you will be exposed to things that your board members and your members of your will never be exposed to.
So maybe we should add common sense and empirical knowledge.
There you go. Dashboards. Now dashboard. I found out what a dashboard is. Man, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of stuff that I used to go by the gut. So it's really cool.
That's neat. That's neat. Hey, Tom, I want to thank you so much for coming on a second time. This is cool. If anybody's got a question, it's is it WSRA.org or com? I forgot.
Come on, man.
Western States Roofing Con, WSRA.
Okay, so let's go through this. Let's be very clear.
Okay.
It's www.WSRCA.com.
Contractors.
Yeah, contractors. There we go.
My
That's what we are. We're contractors.
My bad.
And my members are contractors. And for those of you that are interested, you can come and we're doing a virtual expo. We're doing a bunch of really cool things as a result of this COVID. So you can come to our website, wander around and take a look, or you can contact me via the website, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions you might have personally.
Yeah, Tom, there's been a lot of discussion with the chief staff executives on converting their virtual to, their live events to expo. Have you had yours yet, or is it coming up?
It's coming up July 1st through 15th. So we took the largest regional trade association in the country, and in a month and a half converted it to a virtual event.
Wow.
And we did it organically. There were a couple of off-the-shelf things that we could have used that just, you didn't do this, didn't do that. And we just took the elements of our trade show, which is basically the trade show floor, which is always fun. It's not going to be fun this year. But the educational element and the things that we have to accomplish at our trade show, such as electing new directors and officers, that kind of thing. Said, all right, let's build a trade show around those elements.
Mhm.
And if you go to our website, I got to tell you, the people I work with are, again, they've always been known as rock stars, but there are 6 of us, and we killed it. We absolutely murdered it. We are, as I understand it, and we've been told, we're setting the standard for virtual. Now, I'm not sure I want to set that standard, quite frankly, because I like to go back to Vegas and visit my friends and visit my people and talk with people and learn things and have a beer with folks. But as far as virtual is concerned, is making lemonades out of lemons. We're doing really good. So anybody wants to reach out, that's cool.
Tom, did you buy into one of the platform services, or did you guys create your own?
We created our own.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
we just, like I said, Ed, we took the elements that we had to accomplish.
Mhm.
The trade show floor. Okay, there's a virtual trade show floor. The seminars, which we were bound by space to 24 because of the building, Paris, Las Vegas. Okay, now I think we have 30. So we're not bound by that. They're going to be recorded. They're going to be up on the website from the 1st to the 15th of July. And then they're going to be on our website through the balance of the year.
Mhm.
So there's cool things. And then the kind of things like the opening meeting that we would have and the election of directors. And that's just during the opening session. So we're kind of doing that within the virtual environment.
Okay.
That's all we really needed was education, virtual trade show where our exhibitors can show things. And I mean, the virtual, let's put it this way, people spend a heck of a lot of money and effort bringing their staff and their stuff and shipping and logistics and building. None of that's possible. So they've taken the virtual platform that we built through something we already had, and we've allowed them to do that. And some of them have gone nuts with it. They've absolutely built it. They got videos, they got interviews, they've got product things that are changing I'm amazed every time I look at it. But it's all on the same platform. Everybody has the same access to it. It just depends on how fancy you want to get, but it's all up to the exhibitor. So the guy that has the 10 by 10 in our show floor actually could build a booth that looks like a big honking 40 by 60 if they
Sure.
want to.
Sure. Wow. That's amazing. That's
Very
amazing.
cool.
Well, hey, Tom, best of luck with that show.
Thank you.
Best of continued success with your association. Again, thank you so much for jumping on the call. And I look forward to the next time that we can do this.
All right. Thanks, Ed.